Good evening from the Theatre Royal in Dumfries for the latest in a special series looking at constituencies across our region. Coming up in tonight's programme,
hospitality, high streets and infrastructure. Those are the things that really will make a difference.
the stage is set in Dumfriesshire. Local people tell us what they think could decide the election here, and we'll question candidates to see what they have to offer.
The SNP are out in front with a huge 24-point lead over Labour and Reform, but a lot could still change before polling day.
With 4 weeks to go, we'll consider how the parties are polling. As Scotland's oldest working theatre, the stage here has seen its fair share of tragedy and comedy over the centuries. This year's Holyrood election campaign has already provided some drama, and with 4 weeks to go until people cast their vote, parties and candidates know they need to put on the performance of a lifetime. Today we're focusing on Dumfriesshire, which stretches from Sanquhar and Moffat in the north to Annan and Gretna near the border with England. Between them are historic towns like Lockerbie and Langham. And the constituency also includes the eastern part of Dumfries, which is home to the Theatre Royal, our venue for this evening. The Scottish Conservatives held the seat fairly comfortably in 2021, with a majority of more than 4,000 over the SNP in second place. Labour were a long way behind in third, with the Liberal Democrats losing their deposit. But 5 years on, how different could things be? Natalie Higgins reports.
This is Dumfriesshire, vast and picturesque. But despite its obvious attraction, communities here are shrinking as younger families move away and birth rates fall.
The River Sark flows through Gretna, marking the border between Scotland and England. It's a narrow stretch of water, but for families here, it represents a much wider divide when it comes to the support they can access compared to their English neighbours.
You push it down. Yeah!
Megan pays around £800 a month to send 1-year-old Bethany to nursery. But if she lived 5 minutes down the road in England, she'd pay nothing.
It's a lot. She enjoys it, but financially it's a lot. It feels like we're kind of being penalised as working parents, really, when in my opinion it should be the opposite, especially when it's, it works out that you're paying out more for childcare than you are able to earn a wage. It doesn't make sense, and just because you work doesn't necessarily mean you can afford to take your children out more than people that receive benefits. All children deserve the same, regardless.
And she's not the only one feeling the pressure.
You can bounce really high, can't you?
Rochelle plans to send Eddie to nursery after the summer, but is dreading the monthly costs.
It would have been so much better for being able to, for work-life balance, for not having to pay so much for it. It would have just, it would have been great. I do feel like every child, no matter whereabouts they live in the UK, should be entitled to all the same thing. And childcare doesn't just benefit the parents, it benefits the children, so I don't know why all children can't have that opportunity.
With 4 weeks until polling day, candidates are under pressure to prove they can deliver on the issues that matter most.
I'll be focused on those bread and butter issues like fixing the roads, making sure we get the buses back to where the people want them to be.
Craig Hoy hopes to rally support here, but the polls suggest the Tories will take a hit, while Reform surge ahead.
Are you concerned that the vote that would usually go Conservative could be split and then hamper how well you do?
Yeah, I'm not complacent. I recognise that there is a reform movement out there, but what I'm saying to people on the doorsteps is that if they vote reform, the likelihood is that they'll let the SNP candidate win here. And if the SNP win in this constituency, if they win in Dumfriesshire, then they can win anywhere and everywhere in Scotland. And we would be straight back into the terror in many voters' eyes of another independence referendum. And the only way to stop that happening here is to vote for the Scottish Conservatives, to vote for me.
What good is love, baby, now? What good is hope, baby, now? What good is
Striking a hopeful note, Dumfries and Galloway Council leader Stephen Thompson aims to unseat the Conservatives.
the concerns that are here around depopulation, agriculture, connectivity, schools and education, childcare, all of those things are just as important to Dumfriesshire, and I want to stand up for them at the Scottish Parliament.
The SNP government has been in power for nearly 2 decades, and in the last election promised to expand free early years education to all 1- and 2-year-olds. But 5 years on, that's not the case.
The feedback I'm getting is you kind of need that further support, especially if you're working, to suit the hours that you're needing to do and when you need the childcare, and I think that's part of what the new Scottish Government will be able to take forward.
I mean, obviously this is a devolved power as well. Why is it now that this would potentially be discussed? Why could this not have been brought in at a similar time when it had been brought in England, maybe?
I think there's always different political priorities, but I think we now recognise that now this maybe needs to take priority.
Reform wants seats at the table in Holyrood.
We're not the rest. We are a party of ordinary people who have really got fed up with the political establishment.
But last year they were shut out of a summit that all other main parties were invited to because the First Minister, John Swinney, said they were far right.
In an interview with ITV, you said that the government had described it as an anti-far right summit. Is reform far right?
No, of course we're not. Far right is just somebody they don't like. That's really all it is. It's a totally meaningless phrase. We're not far right, we're just right.
Why do you think that you were excluded then?
Because we're a threat to them. We're a threat to their political power.
I'm here for people in Dumfries. I think Dumfriesshire's been missed out for a long time under the SNP government.
Labour's still chasing the pack here after a 3rd place finish in 2021, but will unpopular decisions made at Westminster set the pace this time around?
Are you not concerned that maybe the Prime Minister's unpopularity might translate to a lack of votes here, though?
I think Anna Sauer did a really good thing when he said that Keir Starmer should stand down. I think that was the right thing to do. But actually, it's not about Keir Starmer. Ordinary working people are saying they're paying higher taxes here. They're seeing nothing for it. What they want is investment down here. What they want is recognition for Dumfriesshire.
While the Liberal Democrats are showing shoots of growth nationally, support here is still a little green.
If you want things done, and who at least sit down and negotiate with the SNP as they did in the budget, and they have pushed things through in that direction, and they are certainly very passionate, as you've maybe seen, about looking after mental health, children and schools. We've got to get the grassroots sorted.
For voters here, this election isn't just about the politics, it's about viability, whether young families can afford to live here, if services can remain open, and if places like Dumfriesshire can attract the next generation.
Natalie Higgins, and here's the full list of candidates contesting the Dumfriesshire constituency in the Holyrood election, which takes place exactly 4 weeks from now. Well, I'm joined now by a couple of people who know a thing or two about getting it right under the spotlight. That's broadcaster Lee Med and Mark Alexander, Director of the Theatre Royal. Mark, what exactly are the big issues facing charities like yours in the run-up to this election?
Well, it's very difficult in a rural area to run commercial theatre. That's the West End, so we need the support we can get. So it's lovely to have support from grants and stuff, but most of our money's earned from the box office. And of course, when you get troubled times, everybody's feeling the pinch in their pocket.
Lee, broadening it out a bit more, I mentioned the pinch in the pocket. What are the wider issues that people are talking about here in Dumfriesshire?
Across Dumfriesshire, it's a really mixed bag just now, but it comes down to the same old things: hospitals, hospitality and infrastructure, time and time again. Especially when we look at the hospitality sector just now, like we've got here at the Theatre Royal with the arts. People want to go out, they want to enjoy themselves, they want to forget everything that's going on, but it's so difficult to do that. With so many jobs in the Dumfriesshire region relying on hospitality, the proposed levy for tourism tax is just another thing that businesses are having to think about.
Yeah, Mark, with that in mind, is that, are these the issues you're hearing about from people coming through the doors? And I suppose you mentioned in your question about the difficulties getting people in. How tough is the environment just now?
At the moment, it's worrying because people book late when they're not sure. So you're saying, is this going to work, is this not? And you don't find out till the last minute. But one of the things that this being a very old theatre, the oldest theatre in Scotland, is we've got a heritage side as well as a performance side, and undoubtedly this region really needs to develop its tourism, but it's need of more seed funding than taxing to make that happen.
Yeah, do you get the sense, Lee, that there is, a push on tourism, on, really bringing out the things that this region specifically, not just the Central Belt, could do with and is great at?
Very much so. We know hospitality is the lifeblood of the Dumfriesshire region, of Dumfries and Galloway in the west, with so much going on with events, but really, literary tourism is a huge thing that we can capitalise on. Burns, Barry, Bruce, all that sort of thing. And again, agencies such as the South of Scotland Destination Alliance, they have been trying to get that momentum moving forward. But again, it's a slow process. We're in, I think, year 2 of a 3-year plan from them, and we will get there, but it's getting the momentum, getting people aware of it, and actually being able to get tourism businesses on board. Just now is a very small cohort of people in the Burns Tourism Partnership, but that needs to grow, and people need to understand that these things are going to make a difference, but it's going to take time and investment.
Yeah, Mark, do you get the sense with that in mind that the eyes of decision makers and ears of decision makers are really looking or listening as far south as us?
Yes, I mean, we're very grateful that locally we've never been a political football or cross-party support for the region, and the Scottish Government is certainly helping. But the South of Scotland Destination Alliance have been lovely things like getting Sam Hagen onto the Jimmy Fallon show and so on, and trying to increase the American tourist market, which obviously we hope will settle down to be a really good potential for the region.
Lee, to get it a little bit more political, this seat has generally been seen as a pretty safe Conservative seat over the years, the last bastionism sometimes of Conservatives in Scotland. Do you think that's likely to continue, or how much of a challenge are they facing, particularly with the rise of the likes of Reform?
It's going to be a huge, huge challenge. It is going to come down to how much of that loyalty was to the party of the Conservatives, or was it to the Mundells for the past decade? It has, as you said, been viewed as Mundell country. The question is now, how many people are sick of the party and want to try something else? And how much of that how much of that vote is going to split between the Conservatives and Reform? My fear is there's going to be a big split there, speaking to people, and they're going to let the SNP right up the middle, and that's where it's going to get very interesting, from a close 2-way last time round to an even closer 3-way this time.
Mark, do you pick up much, from people coming in here? Is the election cutting through at all? Are folk chattering about it? We're only 4 weeks out,
Funnily, no. It seems, just personally, I have hardly noticed as much of a fuss as you sometimes get. I suppose it's competing with incredible world news at the moment. Yeah,
and with that in mind, Lee, is that something you think we're being overtaken by kind of global events? We've not even, something that struck me throughout this campaign is we've not even seen, or I've not even seen a window poster yet, which is something you would have expected to, at least somewhere in Scotland we've been touring about.
Yeah, you would, and you're quite right. And what we have seen is everything that's going on at an international level dominate, and I think that's down to the fact there's characters involved in just now. What's going on in the world is kind of like a soap opera that we're all watching just now, and the eyes have been taken away from what's going on. I think also what has hurt it a little bit this time in terms of the Holyrood election is there's no characters, there's no Nicola Sturgeon, there's no big faces there to draw the eyes there. So we're kind of just now looking at different shades of grey.
Mark, no matter who forms the next Scottish Government, what do you think its main priorities should be?
I think economic development, and that is going to be service industry and tourism, hospitality, and whoever it is, I hope they match the current Scottish Government, who have actually put a considerable amount of investment in the arts, kept the promises for an extra 20 million. So there's a challenge to the other parties to do the same.
Lee, how about you on that front?
And again, I think it needs to be hospitality, high streets and infrastructure. Those are the things that really will make a difference, not just locally, but nationally when they get up and running.
Well, we'll see how we go with all of that. But for now, it's time for us to take a short interval. But coming up, we'll consider what the polls are telling us about each of the main parties with just 4 weeks until election day. Welcome back. The Scottish Conservative leader was campaigning in Dumfries and Galloway today as he bids to shore up support for the party in the south of Scotland. Russell Finlay visited the Annandale distillery where he pledged that if he won power, he'd provide funding to upgrade sections of the A75 road within the next 5 years.
We would improve the system whereby the funding for these would tap into private funding to ensure that the money is there to get on with the job. We'd expedite the planning process around timescales and all the rest of it. Far too much of this gets tied up in red tape, and the SNP talk a good game but they fail to deliver. And the failure to deliver isn't just inconveniencing the economy and inconveniencing people going about their daily lives, it's costing lives. There's far too many accidents.
The Tories' pledge to upgrade the region's roads follows the South West Scotland Transport Alliance identifying a list of upgrades it says could be realistically delivered in the coming years after being commissioned to do so by the Scottish Government. The SNP will publish its election manifesto in the coming weeks. But on Tuesday, Anas Sarwar told this programme that A75 and A77 would be fully dualled if his party wins the election, though he wouldn't say when. This morning, the Scottish Labour leader visited Torness Power Station, arguing that embracing new nuclear facilities could create around 5,000 jobs. But on the topic of local roads, he insisted that he is the politician who will fulfil their promises on road upgrades.
I want it as soon as possible and as cost effectively as possible. That's why we will do a full business case to make sure we're delivering the dualling of the A77 and the A75. The communities in Ayrshire, in the south of Scotland, in Dumfries and Galloway, in the borders, have heard big promises from governments before and politicians before, and they have failed to deliver. So I'm going to hold to that business case to make sure we actually deliver it, rather than politicians making grand promises on timelines that are then never delivered.
Now, we're a fortnight into the election campaign and parties are already experiencing the highs and lows of opinion polling. Labour was buoyed at the weekend by research that suggested it was pulling away from Reform in second place. But a new survey published yesterday indicated the SNP moving even further away of the chasing pack in a boost to John Swinney's hopes of winning a Holyrood majority. So what is the state of play? I asked Emily Gray, Managing Director of Ipsos Scotland, who carried out that most recent poll. Emily Gray, we're exactly 4 weeks out from the Holyrood election. What's the overall picture shown us in the polls?
Well, the SNP are out in front with a huge 24-point lead over Labour and Reform in second place. So, very strong position that I think any party would be envious of at this point in the campaign, but a lot could still change before polling day.
And has there been any, have there been any movement in the polls? It seemed pretty consistent over the course of the year. I just wonder if that's shifted moving into the election campaign.
So it has shifted for some of the parties. What we see is that the SNP are up a few points compared with February, whereas for Scottish Labour, the reverse has happened. They've slumped down in the polls a few points since February, both on the constituency vote and on the list. So certainly the positions of the parties are changing, but with 4 in 10 voters telling us they still might change their minds before polling day, there's still opportunities for the parties to shift the dial on that.
So does that mean that we're really looking at the main contest here being between Labour and Reform for second place?
I think remains to be seen. I think there are a few things to watch at this election. One is the number of seats that the SNP are able to win, because at the moment this would put them within touching distance of a majority. But again, that could change. They could fall short as they did last time around. But certainly that race for second place between Labour and Reform is certainly one to watch.
So you do think that this, the SNP are in with a realistic chance of a majority now, despite still polling quite substantially down on 2021?
And they are down on 2021, so much is going to depend on how those final vote shares fall out and what they're able to do over the next 4 weeks. So there are some positive signs from that for them. So John Swinney's approval ratings are up a bit compared with a month ago, and you also see that they're the most trusted party to handle the biggest issue at this election, which is the NHS. But still, a lot could change.
So a lot could change. How certain are people of their votes just now?
Well, around 4 in 10 people tell us that they might still change their minds before polling day. Now, that's higher than we saw at the last election back in 2021. And so what that means is I think we're likely to see more volatility in the electorate at this election than we did last time around. Most people who say that they would vote Reform UK or SNP at the moment say that they've definitely decided to do that. But the votes for Labour and the Liberal Democrats look a bit softer. So they look a bit more, those parties look more vulnerable just now to people changing their minds.
Do we know where they're vulnerable to?
Well, the party that looks set to benefit most from vote switching is actually the Scottish Greens. Around a quarter of people who might still change their minds tell us that they might that they would consider voting for the Scottish Greens.
And what are the key issues that are driving how people are considering voting at the moment?
So the biggest issue by far for the public just now is the NHS. Again, that's very different to 5 years ago when the big issue was independence. But then issues like the cost of living and immigration are also looming large for the public just now. And a big change compared with a month ago is that the public are more worried than they were about the cost of living and about energy policy, of course likely to be driven by the conflict in the Middle East. So I think parties that are able to campaign well on those issues that really hit people in their pockets before polling day are likely to have a big advantage.
So you mentioned energy policy. I think that's the first time this has crept up into the highest ranked areas of concerns in one of your polls. What does that say about the shape of the election campaign and, as you mentioned there, the prospect of kind of world events influencing this Holyrood campaign?
Mm-hmm. Well, certainly what we see is that public concern about energy is up. As you say, it's not an issue that we've ever seen appear in the top 5 issues for the Scottish public before, so that is something new. I think events will probably dictate how that plays out over the coming weeks, but particularly concerns like fuel prices are hitting people very directly just now.
Another striking factor in your poll is that none of the political leaders appear to be very popular at all negative ratings. How important is that when parties appear to be running increasingly presidential campaigns?
I think that this is important. So people are, by and large, pretty disaffected with Scotland's party leaders. So back in 2021, most of the leaders got a positive rating overall from the public. Now none of them do. So although John Swinney is the best rated of the party leaders just now, his rating overall is still negative.
That's great. Emily Gray, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, pleasure.
And that's our curtain call for tonight and for this week. We'll be back on Tuesday with the next of our party leader interviews. I hope you can join us then. But for now, thanks for watching and good night.